The Marines would finally be given
direct
the order
fire at that
to
point.
open fire, and they would open fire with everything they had and put as many shells downrange as they possibly could, taking the Japanese completely off guard.
Sink some ships
and hitting
here.
Almost all of their ships with effective fire. In a matter of minutes, they were able to sink one of the destroyers by hitting it twice in its magazine. The destroyer Hayate would be sunk in 12 minutes.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be checking out 450 Marines versus the Imperial Japanese Army, Wake Island, by the Fat Electrician guys. Yes, this has been recommended a bunch. All the Fat Electrician videos have actually probably been recommended by now, if I had to assume. I've heard probably a recommendation for at least one of each, so whatever order we go into, you know, it's kind of random at this point. In the case of today, this video is 16 minutes long. I do have work today, so I figure we check it out while there's some time in the morning here real quick. But yeah, without any further delay, guys, Wake Island. I have heard a little bit about this this battle, and I have seen the Pacific as well, and I believe Wake Island is one of the battles portrayed in that. It's been a while since I've checked it out, so I'm going to be a little bit rusty. Some cobwebs are going to be shaken up. I think this is where Alligator Creek took place, the Battle of Alligator Creek. I could be completely wrong on that though. One of the Pacific Islands, but we're gonna find out obviously today. He's probably gonna tell us all about it if it did happen. So yeah, if you guys enjoy that video, this reaction, hit the like button, subscribe for more content from me, of course. Leave your recommendations down in the comments below. I always do appreciate those, guys. Captions are gonna be on. We're full screen. Without any further delay, let's get it, guys.
During World War II, the Japanese military used to think that the Marines were all recruited from prisons and insane asylums, which, to be honest, it's always made sense to me, but after researching for this video, it's starting to make dollars.
Oh, really?
Today we're talking about the first time that the United States Marine Corps would come toe-to-toe with the Japanese military. Ladies and gentlemen, Wake Island, a small coral atoll 2,000 miles west of Hawaii, closer to Japan than it was to America, and highly sought after by the Japanese to be a forward operating base for World War II. The only problem with that was, it was currently held by the Americans. 450 Marine Corps artillerymen and 1,200 civilian construction workers, as well as 70 Navy corpsmen. In this context, for the layman, if you don't know, Navy corpsman is a fancy word for Marine Corps medic, aka Doc. And they didn't have much to defend the island with, but they did have 6 5-inch coastal artillery guns that were actually taken from America's first ever battleship, the original USS Texas from the 1800s. They also had 12 3-inch anti-aircraft guns, 18 M2 Browning machine guns, 30 Browning 30 caliber machine guns, as well as 12 Grumman F4F Wildcat fighters. In regards to
I will say, it's a rather small garrison, but in terms of the support equipment that small garrison has available to them, it's pretty supreme. You know, you're talking multiple 50s, multiple 30s. They do have some planes, some fighter planes, support planes on the runway as well. 450 guys. I mean, not really a whole lot. I mean, shit, that's what, I guess a company at that point, right? Like, I mean, shit. Yeah, I don't know American numbers. I know our numbers here in Canada, you know, so like, you know, a platoon is like 40 guys here in Canada. It's really not much. But either way, yeah, without any further delay, let's keep going into this. I didn't realize they were so equipped, and that does make sense how they were able to counter the Japanese tactics in this scenario. I'm pretty sure they do a very, very good job of that.
Machine guns, as well as 12 Grumman F4F Wildcat fighters. In regards to time, Wake Island is 22 hours ahead of Hawaii, meaning that from their perspective, Pearl Harbor would take place on December 8th, 1941. An hour after the attack on Pearl Harbor had ended, Wake would receive a transmission saying that Pearl Harbor had occurred and that they needed to be prepared. 2 hours after that, 27 Japanese bombers would conduct an air raid on Wake Island, destroying 8 of their 12 F4F Wildcat fighters before they even left the airstrip. At this point, 400 civilian construction workers would volunteer to help fight if it came to that, and the Marines began training them on how to operate machine guns immediately, while also fortifying fighting positions. Wake Island would then be bombed again on the 9th, and on December 11th, 1941, an entire Japanese naval detachment would arrive at Wake Island, and the battle for Wake would officially begin. As the Marines, the Navy Corps,
and I could be wrong too, and this is a weird question actually. I've not thought about this. The Japanese don't actually have an equivalent Marine force, do they? Technically, it's just Japanese army, right, doing these invasions. I don't believe actually have like a naval like a naval force. You know what I'm saying? In that context, I do believe that IJN, right? No, IJA, Imperial Japanese Army. Yeah, IJA was just conducting all invasions, right? So obviously they were used to like a ground war in China. So when you start doing this island hopping campaign, especially against a force that has support equipment, it's not just like rice farmers with pitchforks literally anymore, you know, or guys with muskets, unironically. Like, no, these guys are packing machine guns, they're packing artillery, they're packing support equipment, right? So your human wave offense, run at them and scream at the top of your lungs, it doesn't scare American Marines. You know what I'm saying? It just doesn't.
Detachment would arrive at Wake Island. And on December 11th, 1941, an entire Japanese naval detachment would arrive at Wake Island, and the battle for Wake would officially begin. As the Marines, the Navy corpsmen, and the construction workers rushed to their battle stations, they would see that they were incredibly outmanned and outgunned. The Japanese had brought with them 3 light cruisers, 6 destroyers, 3 submarines, 1 submarine tender, 2 PT boats, and 2 amphibious landing ships equipped with 450 special naval landing forces of the Japanese, which is essentially the Japanese equivalent of Marines. As the entire Japanese naval detachment advanced closer and closer to the island, they would finally come within striking distance of the Marine artillery, 12,000 yards. Despite that, and much to the confusion of the Marines, they were all ordered to hold their fire, which made absolutely no sense to them. These men could hit bullseyes at 12,000 yards. These guys would put a fucking 5-inch shell through a bedroom window if they wanted to. Why on earth are they being told to hold their fire? But the man in charge of the Marines, Commander Devereaux, realized that the Japanese artillery on the ships actually outranged the Marine artillery, and they weren't firing yet. And this must mean that the Japanese thought that their air raids had disabled all of the Marine defenses on the island, which was not true at all, because in reality the only thing they had taken out was the original 8 Wildcats from day one. So under the command of Major Devereaux, the Marines would continue to hold their fire and play possum as the entire detachment advanced closer and closer. 10,000 yards, 8,000 yards, 6,000 yards, 4,000 yards, which as far as a Marine artilleryman is concerned is point blank fucking range. If they got any closer, these Marines were going to try to put a bayonet on this 5-inch gun, okay? The Marines would finally be given the order to open fire, and they would open fire with everything they had and put as many shells downrange as they possibly could, taking the Japanese completely off guard.
Sink some ships here.
Almost all of their ships with effective fire. In a matter of minutes, they were able to sink one of the destroyers by hitting it twice in its magazine. The destroyer Hayate would be sunk in 12 minutes. And I cannot stress to you what a big deal this is. At this point in time, Japan...
That's a massive deal. I didn't realize that Japan lost ships on this invasion to Marine Corps artillerymen. Like, it is very rare that Army elements, or in this case, Marine elements, right? Either way, foot soldiers, right, are taking out fucking like naval vessels. That doesn't happen very often, especially given the destructive power of naval vessels, right? Again, these guns completely outrange anything that they would have on the ground, just through caliber alone, right? The fact that they waited was very smart. The fact that they, you know, because they're not allowing the Japanese to zero in their location and just bomb them into oblivion, right? That's the problem there. So waiting, definitely a good play, and the fact that they were able to sink ships is massive. I had no idea that happened.
Sunk in 12 minutes. And I cannot stress to you what a big deal this is.
Yeah,
At this point in time, Japan has effectively attacked Pearl Harbor and 27 other locations in the Pacific, and they have never lost a single naval vessel. And it took the Marine artillerymen 12 minutes to put one completely under the water.
But mind you, a destroyer is nothing insane,
the Japanese
but
naval detachment would turn
still a big
and retreat. And it is at this point that they would realize that they made a fatal flaw in their attack strategy, because they didn't bring a carrier and they brought no planes for air support. Cue this man, Henry Elrod, aka Hammer and Hank, and one of the first main characters that would ever enter the battlefield in World War II on America's behalf. Himself and the other 3 Grumman Wildcat fighters would take off into the sky. They would realize that the Japanese naval detachment came with no carrier and no airplanes overhead, and let's face it, Japanese AA guns might as well be crewed by fucking stormtroopers, because they can't hit shit. So the 4 Wildcat pilots take off and proceed to kick the entire naval detachment in the ass on the way out as they strafe their decks with machine gun fire and drop 100-pound bombs on their decks. Now, a 100-pound bomb and machine gun fire absolutely should never be able to sink a major naval vessel, like ever. Good old Hammer and Hank, though, managed to park one of those 100-pound bombs directly on top of the depth charges on top of the deck of the destroyer Kisarage, setting off a chain reaction that would sink the entire naval vessel.
Yeah, I was gonna say a 100-pound bomb is still that's a sizable bomb, right? And again, yeah, if that hits a magazine at all, the bomb itself will not destroy the vessel, but if it hits any magazine, any of the like onboard like radiators, smokestacks, engines, that type of thing, yeah, no, you can absolutely disable or possibly sink a ship with that, 100%. You know, just machine gun fire, no, of course not. That's going to freak the fuck out of the crew, and of course, you know, kill crew. And you could disable. You could do a lot. You could do a lot of disabling, but you wouldn't stop a ship dead with just machine guns alone.
Destroyer Kisarage, setting off a chain reaction that would sink the entire naval vessel. Which is literally the equivalent of killing a grown-ass man with a BB gun, but somehow he pulled it off anyways. Which, I mean, to be fair, is just standard behavior for the Marine Corps at this point. Now, the smoke settles from the battle, and they have to figure out what all happened, because, you know, there's a lot of moving parts. Come to find out, the only thing that the Marines lost, 2 of the planes were so damaged that they weren't going to be flyable anymore, so now they're only down to 2 Grumman Wildcats, and only 5 people had been injured. Nobody died on the American side. Japan, on the other hand, had lost 2 destroyers, a submarine, and a suspected 300 plus men. Needless to say, the Japanese are fucking pissed and embarrassed about this entire thing. Which, I mean, they kind of have a right to be upset too. I mean, this was the first 2 ships they've had sunk during World War II. This was the first tactical loss they've had, and this is the only successful amphibious landing defense using coastal artillery ever in all of World War II.
Literally.
They straight up kind of got their asses whooped. And because they're so upset, they pretty much immediately sent out another air raid from the Marshall Islands and bombed Wake Island again. And they continued to bomb Wake Island every day for the next 10 days. Thankfully, they still didn't manage to hit a whole lot. Total stormtrooper energy, just misses every single time. And during this 10 days, the American people would find out that 450 Marines and a bunch of construction workers stood up to the Japanese Navy and told them to get fucked. And this became the silver lining for the catastrophe that was Pearl Harbor. Wake Island was a shining example that the American public looked to and said, if those 450 dudes were able to accomplish that when they weren't ready, imagine what we're going to be able to do once we actually start trying. This victory, unfortunately, would be short-lived.
Yeah, Pearl Harbor, from the Japanese point of view, was seen as such a strategic win, such a tactical win. Oh, they'll just surrender to us? No, bro. Like, you just woke the fucking giant is all you did there. Like, straight up. Like, you know, the war assets were not in place to fight Japan. It was an element of surprise. But after a year, no, bro. Like, the might of the American military is going to come down on you. The American industrial system at that time dwarfed Japan by multitudes. It's not even a fucking comparison on paper. So it was a very, very silly thing to do. Again, Japan tried to have that big dick energy, but yeah, Pearl Harbor was just a massive mistake, especially for the European front too. Like, the Germans only did it out of virtue. I don't think they wanted America in that war, if I recall.
Imagine what we're going to be able to do once we actually start trying. This victory, unfortunately, would be short-lived because it is now a race between Japan and America to see who can get reinforcements to Wake Island first. The problem with that is the Japanese reinforcements are coming from all their other successful attack missions, including Pearl Harbor, so they have a huge head start on the Americans. So obviously they get all of their ships there first. So the Marines call up the Navy chain of command and are like, hey, there's a bunch of more Japanese ships here, including some aircraft carriers. Hurry up. At which point, the United States Navy, or maybe not the Navy, but the government, somebody at a high level decides that, well, we don't want to lose any more ships, so we're just going to consider all of Wake Island collateral damage, and we're going to leave all of you there to die.
That's fucked.
I wish I was joking.
Yeah.
So the first battle for Wake Island was on December 11th. They then got bombed every day for 10 days straight. It is now December 22nd. They have all been left there to die, except these are United States Marines, so fuck it, we're still gonna fight anyways, because that's just how they get down. So December 22nd, 1941, the second battle for Wake Island is about to kick off. In the red, white, and blue corner, we have 450 Marine artillerymen, 400 construction workers, and 70 Navy corpsmen, going toe-to-toe with a reinforced Japanese Navy of 3 light cruisers, 6 destroyers, 2 PT boats, 2 amphibious landing vehicles, a bunch of more amphibious landing soldiers, 1 submarine tender, 2 submarines, 4 heavy cruisers, 2 mine layers, and 2 aircraft carriers returning from Pearl Harbor. The IJN hear you, and the IJN see you. Apparently, the IJN smell you and taste you were fucking busy. And now, to the Marine Corps' surprise, the entire naval detachment refuses to get anywhere near this island, not willing to come within 12,000 yards because they don't want to get shot up by accurate Marine artillery fire again. So instead, what they do is they send out their 2 amphibious landing ships with 900 soldiers on them.
Oh my God.
They deploy every single plane that their aircraft carriers have. The 2 remaining Marine Corps Wildcat fighters are about to go toe-to-toe with 50 Japanese aircraft. And somehow, those 2 badass Marine aviators managed to shoot down 21 Japanese planes. One of which was the bomber of Bombardier Norobu Kanai, the man that was credited with sinking the USS Arizona. This would be considered the first ever revenge for Pearl Harbor. The remaining Japanese...
And that's impressive to know, but I think early war Japanese planes were rather dog shit. Also, the experience of the average Japanese pilot was just not there, right? And Japan had like the bad syndrome of putting its aces directly back into combat, whereas America had the advantage of filtering out its aces, right? That's just training doctrine for them, right? Okay, you're doing really, really well in the sky. We're shipping you back to the US to train pilots. Versus Japan, just keep going, shoot down more planes, and then when they get shot down, it's like, you know, you have nobody back home training that new generation of pilots. So when you do incur casualties, it's just irreplaceable for them. That's eventually the syndrome that they had. Their later war planes were actually surprisingly very, very, very well made and surprisingly good at what they could do. Like late war Zeros were fucking nuts, you know? But yeah, at this time period, also, I know that you mentioned that they have AA guns on the ground as well. So, I mean, I don't know how many of those kills, if all of those kills went to the Grumman fighters, or if that was a mix of AA. Probably hard to tell in the heat of combat, especially, you know, like everyone's kind of concerned about something else.
Arizona. This would be considered the first ever revenge for Pearl Harbor. The remaining Japanese planes then proceeded to bomb and strafe the island with machine gun fire. They didn't really do a whole lot of damage, but one thing they did take out was the communication lines leaving the command bunker where Major Devereaux was. And nobody knew that that had happened, so Major Devereaux's inside of his bunker giving orders, but nobody's hearing them. So when the 900 Japanese Special Naval Landing Forces landed on the beach, and they weren't given any orders, the Marines are kind of like, what are we doing? What's the play? No orders came through, so they're gonna do what Marines do best, be default aggressive and go fuck shit up. Given a lack of instruction, they will resort to destruction every single time. The Marines on their own accord decide that they are going to fix bayonets, leave the machine guns and fortified fighting positions with the civilians that they trained, and they are gonna go meet a 2-to-1 battle against the Japanese Special Landing Forces on the beach in the middle of bumfuck nowhere in the Pacific. One of these two groups is the best amphibious fighting force on Earth, and they are about to figure it out right now. For the next 11 hours, the Marine Corps and the Japanese Special Landing Forces would engage in close combat, and not only were the Marines successful at defending, they would begin launching counterattacks, and these counterattacks would fracture the enemy line, sending small groups of enemy soldiers all over the island. It is at this point, after like 11 hours, Commander Devereaux finally comes out of his fucking bunker after not hearing from anyone this entire time.
After
and in
11
his head,
hours?
He's thinking, all of the positions that had radios must have been overrun. That's why they're not responding to me. So he's anticipating that they're losing. And as soon as he walks out of the bunker, he sees Japanese flags all over the island. And he assumes that the flags had been hoisted because the Japanese were victorious. But that's not what was happening. What he was seeing was Japanese good luck flags, which was a Japanese tradition in World War II, where the Japanese soldiers would have their friends and family sign a Japanese flag, and they would hang it on their rifle when they went into battle for good luck. That is what he was seeing, not flags hoisted in victory, because his Marines were kicking their fucking ass. But he didn't know that, so he proceeded to go around.
Another big thing about the Japanese structure of their army too at this point, I'm pretty sure they had like no NCOs, right? Like I could be incorrect in that, but I think it was basically an officer leading men. And after that, there was basically no thought to leadership after that, right? So if that officer died, you basically just had an unorganized group of 7 or 8 fuckers left. You know what I mean? That had no direction and no way to lead themselves forward, which is just insane to think about, especially given the fact, again, their tactics relied on fear tactics for the most part, right? Running at the enemy, bayonet charging, screaming at them. A lot of their weaponry is, you know, they're using Arisakas. It's bolt action rifles versus a Garand from the American side. Now, I don't know how many guys here had Springers and whatnot, like Springfields. This was just like a defense garrison, you know, prior. So, and they were artillerymen. So I'm not really too sure on what their small arms were looking like at this point. But yeah, no, Japanese tactics were just not fucking suited to any Western country at all. Like anytime, you know, Britain, Australia, America fought the Japanese just always incur such a fucking terrific casualty count because they just don't know how to fight us, apparently, you know, at that time period, right? Like they're used to fighting in Asian countries where you can do fear tactic charges like that and it will work. It won't work when your enemy has support equipment.
victory because his Marines were kicking their fucking ass. But he didn't know that, so he proceeded to go around the island and force his men to surrender. Right off the bat, huge problem. The Japanese at this point in time weren't real big on the whole taking prisoners thing. They still very much believed in the Bushido Code of Honor, and if you surrendered on the battlefield, you lost that honor, and as far as they're concerned, if you didn't have your honor, you deserved to die. So it's already not looking that great, and it would become even worse once the fog of the battle finally lifted, and everybody began to look around and realize there's a distinct lack of dead Americans. Plenty of dead people, not many Americans. Because over the last 11 hours, the Japanese landing forces had suffered 600 casualties.
Holy
and the Americans
shit.
had only lost 52 Marines and 70 construction workers. I say only, that's still a lot. It's way too many. It's tragic. I'm not trying to diminish that in any way. I'm simply trying to explain it was an extremely lopsided battle. And this would only serve to infuriate the Japanese even more. So
now, and I'm not trying to be like nitpick on his vocabulary there, but he said 600 casualties for the Japanese and that the Americans lost 52 and 70. So is lost, like, because a casualty in war is injured or dead, or injured or dead, right? One or the other. So I figured 600 dead Japanese, probably what, 200, 300 of those wounded, the other probably dead, right? Let's assume. Out of those Americans, I wonder what the count would be. Like how many are actually dead and how many are actually wounded, you know? Just a little nitpick. Doesn't matter though.
Sided battle, and this would only serve to infuriate the Japanese even more. So the Japanese, now thoroughly pissed off, decide they are going to take every American on Wake Island, including the civilians that didn't even fight, and strip them all butt naked and tie them together in groups of 15 with telephone wire and march all 1,600 of them to the airfield. They then began assembling their crew-served machine guns, intending on executing everyone. They then stood there for 2 days on an airstrip, butt naked in the middle of the Pacific, at gunpoint, until the Japanese admiral came out and announced to them that the Emperor of Japan had decided to grace them with their lives. You see, the American media had made such a big deal of the first defense of Wake Island that the entire world was watching the events unfold now, and Japan knew that they couldn't get away with committing such a mass atrocity without attracting too much attention, so they decided they were going to actually have to abide by the rules of war and take prisoners. The majority of the Americans would then be loaded onto cargo ships and sent to prison camps either in Japan or Japanese-occupied China. And I'm happy to say that the overwhelming majority of them survived all of World War II in these POW camps and got to return home in 1945 and 1946. Upon returning home, they would find out that only months after their first defense of Wake Island, in 1942, Hollywood had turned their life events into a movie. But the problem with the movie was that nobody actually knew what happened at the Second Battle of Wake Island, so Hollywood just anticipated that everybody had died, and that's how the movie ended. Fast forward like 45 years later, there's a Wake Island reunion event where a journalist finally asks all the Marines what they thought of that movie when they first returned home. And without skipping a beat, this man in his 60s or 70s at this point chimes in and says, well, first of all, we didn't actually have a dog there. To which every other Marine began laughing, and it is hands down my favorite part of this story, because somehow that man lived through an entire lifetime worth of shit before he turned 25, and he's now made it into the twilight years of his life with his sense of humor intact and that innate burning desire to be a fucking smartass that every military member I've ever met has. And now, the story's gonna get weird. Whatever became of Wake Island itself, while it would remain under Japanese control for the duration of World War II, every time an American naval vessel drove past it, they would open fire on it with its guns, and they would routinely perform air raids on the island. Now, as fate would have it, one of those air raids on Wake Island would be the very first combat mission of a new pilot that joined the military at the ass end of World War II, and that pilot's name was George Bush.
Whoa.
Don't worry, it's gonna get weirder. Returning out of the men as they were currently serving as prisoners of war, the vast majority were held in POW camps in Japanese-occupied China. Of all the men held there, a single Marine would escape, and he would make his way all the way to northern China, where he would find a group of Chinese communist soldiers, also not super big fans of the Japanese at this point in time, and they would decide, hey, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, I'm gonna make sure this Marine makes it home safe, and that's exactly what they did. And just as that Marine was about to set off on his final journey home, he would receive a visit from those soldiers' leader, and that leader would wish him well on his journey and gift him with several very nice Chinese rugs. That leader's name was Mao Zedong.
No fucking
the
way.
deadliest human of all time, credited with killing somewhere between 40 and 80 million people. Yeah,
that's not funny, but Mao Zedong himself was like, oh yes, great American ally. Fucking, oh yes, we're fighting the Japanese together. That's actually fucking so strange, man. Wow. What a story. Yeah, Mazadong when he was a fucking... He had the cornered rat trait from fucking, like, OA4, you know what I'm saying? And he's out there in the mountains fucking fighting the Japs, you know? Like, what the hell? That's crazy, dude.
I'm credited with killing somewhere between 40 and 80 million people.
Holy shit.
Yeah, the truth is literally stranger than fiction. And all of this happening, I have so many questions, but most important of all, the one question I want an answer to more than anything. What do you think that guy did with the rugs? I mean, for real, on one hand, kind of weird to keep them, but on the other hand, the rug didn't do anything, and it's a nice fucking rug. You know what I mean? Okay, this video's getting
probably also priceless.
In conclusion, after Pearl Harbor, the commander of the Japanese Navy, Admiral Yamamoto, would write in his personal diary, quote, "I fear all we have done is awoken a sleeping giant and filled him with terrible resolve."
Wow.
And I personally find it ironic that the first time that his men would come face to face with that terrible resolve, the sleeping giant that they awoken, would be 3 days later at Wake Island, where 450 Marines, 70 Navy corpsmen, and 400 blue-collar construction workers stood together and halted the most powerful Navy on the planet in their tracks for 16 days. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. The best way to support the channel is go buy some merch at thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang, out.
Wow.
I'm gonna be honest. I probably would have kept those fucking rugs.
Yeah, I would have too, man.
The movie Wake Island when you first saw it.
First thing, we didn't have a dog.
Yeah, that's number one.
And Brian Dunleavy, even though he was a good movie star, there was nothing real about the movie or whatever.
A lot of war bond drives occurred at the movie theaters. People would come to go see the movie. They'd be so pumped up with enthusiasm and patriotism, they'd exit the movie theater and there'd be war bond sales right there. And people would buy war bonds, and it helped the war effort tremendously.
Wow. I didn't know that. That makes sense. I mean, damn, what a way to pump up the population, showing like an epic last stand that literally just happened the year prior while you're at war. I mean, a great piece of propaganda for the American side there. But obviously, yeah, they had no idea how it ended. So that is cool that the Americans survived, like those Marines survived, came back, were able to watch that, were able to have their own opinion on it. And years later, we were able to hear their opinion on it. To actually know the truth of what happened there. I thought that was a great video, guys, to be honest, and yeah, I learned a little bit there. I just wish some of the information was a little bit more clear, like the wording, I guess, like the casualty count. I would like to know, I guess, the exact casualty numbers. You know, I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to those types of numbers, you know. I don't know why it's a grim count, but like, that's just me personally, you know what I'm saying? But otherwise, I thought that video was fantastic. I thought he did a really, really good job on this. It was it's one of his older videos too, 2 years ago, so you know, goddamn, you know, we got to check out some of his newer stuff. I know he's been pushing videos out pretty often lately, I have to say. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe for more content from me. Of course, leave your recommendations down in the comments below, what you guys want me to check out next. A big thank you to all of our members, all of our Hastati, our Principe, Dagenhart, and of course our Prefect Hobbit. Appreciate you guys. You guys inspire me to make more content for you guys. Well, not every single day, but a lot of the time. You know what I'm saying? Thank you for the delay, guys. This has been Centurion. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace, guys.